Welcome to the ISO Show, dispelling myths and sharing tips for success to improve your business with ISO standards, with your host, Mel Blackmore.
Hi and welcome back to the ISO Show. So today we're going to be talking about all things implementation when it comes to the transition to ISO 27001-2022. So I'm talking to those listeners that have already got 27001 in place, and we know that there are a lot of you out there because it is one of the most popular standards globally. So this is all about the second stage in terms of implementation. So in the last episode, we looked at planning, expose, and discovery. So if you haven't listened to that episode, go back and listen to that. And also we've got a free guide on all of the changes in ISO 27001. So just go to your show notes, in terms of the media player that you're listening to, you'll be able to download that. Or pop along to our website, which is www.blackmoresuk.com for your free guide. Okay, so I'm going to be talking through the next stage in our signature ISO 27001 transition program, which is all about implementation. So by this stage, you've got a copy of the standard. Well, it's provided free if you join our transition program, which is worth, over £150, something like that. I don't know exactly what it is off the top of my head, but it's a document that you need to have. It's essential. You've planned your transition, you know the date, and you're working back from there. You've got an understanding of the controls. You've had a discovery session so that you understand where the gaps are and what action you need to take. Now it's all about putting that into practice and making the changes that you need to your management system. Now this could be a good opportunity to have a bit of a spring clean of your InfoSec system. It may be that your InfoSec system's been around for some time, and it may be a case that you feel like it's gathering a bit of dust. So this is a good opportunity to blow the cobwebs off it. You might even want to rebrand it. Check out one of our popular podcasts, which is What's in a Name from 2022 podcast, where we're talking about the branding of the name of your management system. And take a fresh eyes approach. And obviously that's where working with an isologist, like one of my colleagues here at Blackmores, will help you on that journey. So in terms of implementation, we have got a ton of tools in our toolkit to specifically address all of the new controls. So some of the things that you need to start considering updating are things like your statement of applicability, your risk assessment. We've updated all of these to comply with the new standard. Looking at your objectives and action plans, monitoring and measurement, looking at what you're monitoring, measuring and the records, because there's more of an emphasis on that. Obviously, you'll need to update your internal audit schedule or program for 2023 to include the new controls. And then, of course, at a later stage, you're going to be carrying out audits on those, which I'll be covering in the next episode of the ISO Show. So this is where you need to look at what controls you've already got in place. What could you potentially merge together? Because there is a huge opportunity here to significantly reduce the paperwork involved. Sometimes companies that implement this, especially if they're implementing it with us, we want to keep it as simple and effective as possible. You don't need to have pages and pages of information just to cover encryption, which we have seen because you can buy them off the shelf. But unfortunately, they're like trying to fit a square peg into a round hole when it comes to your annual surveillance visit. They're worthless. So we've got some tried and tested controls that we can help to create as a bespoke way for you to manage things like threat intelligence, which is a new control, or the physical security monitoring, again, which is a new control, because you need to show the certification body what monitoring you're planning and doing and the results of that monitoring. So it's really important when we're looking at implementation, we're not just updating documentation, but we're looking at when we can start to implement and communicate these new controls, if they are new. Or it may be that you've got controls that are in place, but they just haven't been formalised, or people don't know about them. That could be quite common, actually. So this is a great opportunity to plan all of that. So there are lots of other things like configuration management, information deletion, and again, some of this may already exist within some of your GDPR controls. So it's not about reinventing the wheel here. From the previous episode, we talked about the discovery phase. We're looking at what you've already got in place that really works well. But where there might be gaps like data masking, that might be something that you haven't necessarily considered seriously. And by the way, we recorded a podcast on data masking last year, so just go back and listen to that when we talked about the new changes in 27002, which is the guidance to the controls of 27001. You might need to look at web filtering when it comes to implementation and secure coding. So there are another couple of new controls. So you need to demonstrate how you're filtering websites. And is that filtering sufficient? And when it comes to secure coding, we're looking at what are the methods being used, and again, how can you demonstrate that evidence of compliance? So communication and evidence is something that it should be at the forefront of your mind when you're updating your information security management system. Because you don't want to create these controls for the sake of it. You need to identify how they're going to reduce risk within your business, how they're going to make a difference, which in theory should result in your risk register being in a much better place and your statement of applicability being optimised ultimately. Okay, so I'm not going to go through in detail any more about the implementation, only to say that it could be 1 day to 3 days as part of our programme, and that will be dependent on what you've already got in place and how much support that you would need. But implementation is so crucial. So within that signature programme, you've got that support, whether it's 1 day, 2 days or 3 days. It won't be any more than 3 days, that's for sure. So hopefully that's given you some indication on what's involved with the implementation of those controls and how you can use it as an opportunity to raise your standards even further and build up that portfolio of evidence that the certification body will be looking for when it comes to your transition visit. And then finally, on the communication of those changes, it's worthwhile having a communications plan, which we can include, and any evidence that people have attended any training. Okay, when I mentioned earlier that we have, mentioned it in the previous episode, we have 11 coffee break training courses. So these are mini bite-sized courses on each of those new controls. So that's an opportunity for you to be able to demonstrate externally or internally that your staff have been made aware of these changes and you can evidence that. So I hope that's been helpful in terms of explaining some of the things involved with the implementation of those controls. So don't forget to download the free ISO 27001 transition guide. And this is obviously in terms of a limited opportunity in terms of the offer that we've got, which is a free copy of ISO 27001 if you sign up for our signature ISO 27001 transition program by the 1st of April 2023. Thanks very much for listening, and I look forward to catching up with you on the next ISO show.
Looking to achieve certification to an ISO standard or just need a helping hand with ISO compliance? Contact us at blackmoresuk.com.